The grand ballroom shimmered, a kaleidoscope of refracted light dancing off crystal chandeliers and the polished surfaces of 1,000 champagne flutes. It was the night of the annual Zenith Awards, a celebration of innovation and achievement, or so the press releases claimed. For Evelyn, it was a carefully constructed stage, a place where she meticulously played a role, the supportive wife, the gracious hostess, the quiet benefactor. She moved through the throng of smiling faces, each one a mask concealing ambition, envy, or thinly veiled disdain. Years she had spent navigating this intricate social labyrinth, mastering its unspoken rules, anticipating its hidden currents. Tonight, however, the carefully constructed facade was about to crack. The Zenith Award for Lifetime Achievement, a gleaming sculpture of forged silver and hand-blown glass, sat prominently displayed on a velvet pedestal. It represented more than just recognition. It was a symbol of power, influence, and validation. For Evelyn, it was a constant reminder of what she lacked, of the dreams she had deferred, of the talent she had suppressed. Her husband Richard, a titan of industry, stood beside her, his hand possessively resting on her arm. He basked in the glow of the cameras, his smile radiating manufactured humility. He was a master of perception, crafting an image of success and benevolence, while ruthlessly crushing anyone who dared to challenge his authority. The presenter's voice boomed through the ballroom, announcing Richard as the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award. Polite applause rippled through the crowd as Richard ascended the stage, his tailored suit impeccable, his hair perfectly coiffed. Evelyn watched him, her expression carefully neutral, masking the turmoil that churned within her. She had been instrumental in his success, a silent partner, a strategic advisor, a tireless supporter. Her ideas, her insights, her connections had paved the way for his empire, yet she remained invisible, her contributions unrecognized, her voice unheard. Richard began his acceptance speech, a carefully rehearsed monologue filled with platitudes and self-congratulatory anecdotes. He spoke of hard work, dedication, and the unwavering support of his team. He mentioned Evelyn only briefly, as an afterthought, a decorative accessory to his success. As his words echoed through the ballroom, a single cutting word pierced through the carefully constructed atmosphere. Useless. The word wasn't spoken aloud, not in the formal speech. It was a whispered aside, delivered with a dismissive smirk, intended only for Evelyn's ears. Richard had leaned in, his breath reeking of aged whiskey and arrogance, and uttered the single, devastating syllable that shattered her carefully constructed world. It was a word that encapsulated years of condescension, of belittlement, of the systematic erosion of her self-worth. It was the final straw, the tipping point, the moment when simmering resentment boiled over into incandescent rage. Evelyn felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The ballroom seemed to fade into a blurry background as her focus narrowed, her senses heightened. She saw the faces in the crowd, the knowing glances, the smug smiles, the silent judgments. She saw the trophy gleaming under the spotlight, a symbol of everything she had been denied. And she saw Richard, standing on the stage, oblivious to the storm brewing within her. In that moment, Evelyn made a decision. It wasn't a calculated plan, but a visceral response, a primal urge to reclaim her power, to assert her worth, to silence the voice that had haunted her for so long. She would not cry. She would not argue. She would not plead. She would act. As Richard concluded his speech to thunderous applause, Evelyn moved with a newfound purpose. She navigated through the crowd, her movements fluid and graceful, her expression betraying nothing of the rebellion that raged within her. She reached the velvet pedestal, her hand instinctively reaching out to grasp the coveted trophy. The weight of it was surprisingly substantial, a solid, tangible object that represented years of unfulfilled potential. With a silent, defiant act, Evelyn lifted the trophy from its pedestal. No one noticed, not yet. The ballroom was still buzzing with the energy of the award ceremony, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations. Evelyn slipped through the crowd, her movements deliberate and unwavering. She reached the exit, the cool night air washing over her face as she stepped out of the opulent ballroom and into the darkness. The heist wasn't about the prize itself. It was about sending a message, about reclaiming her narrative, about proving that she was anything but useless. It was a statement a silent act of rebellion against a world that had underestimated her for far too long. As she walked away from the glittering lights, clutching the trophy tightly in her grasp, Evelyn felt a sense of liberation she had never experienced before. The consequences, she knew, would be significant, but for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The morning dawned with a peculiar stillness, a deceptive calm before the impending storm. City's skyline, usually a symphony of honking cabs and bustling pedestrians, had a muted quality. News spread like wildfire, whispered at first, then shouted from newspaper headlines and blaring from television screens. The Zenith Trophy, symbol of achievement, was missing. The initial reaction was disbelief. Such a brazen act seemed unimaginable, a plot torn from the pages of a pulp novel. Speculation ran rampant, ranging from elaborate pranks to acts of corporate espionage. Law enforcement initiated a full-scale investigation, scouring surveillance footage and interviewing gala attendees. Richard, initially perplexed, swiftly transitioned to outrage. His image, so carefully cultivated, was now tainted by scandal. The missing trophy wasn't just a material loss. It was an assault on his reputation, a challenge to his authority. Consider for a moment the intricate dance of power that defined Richard's world. It was a world built on perception, where appearances mattered more than substance, where influence was wielded through subtle gestures and unspoken agreements. The theft of the trophy disrupted this delicate equilibrium, exposing the vulnerabilities beneath the veneer of invincibility. His allies, usually quick to offer support, now kept a cautious distance, wary of being associated with the scandal. The board meetings, once predictable exercises in unanimous consent, were now rife with tension and veiled accusations. Shareholders grew uneasy, questioning Richard's leadership and demanding answers. The stock price, a barometer of public confidence, began to waver, reflecting the uncertainty that permeated the company. This single act of defiance had unleashed a cascade of consequences, threatening to unravel the empire Richard had so meticulously constructed. Beyond the immediate financial repercussions, the heist ignited a broader conversation about meritocracy and recognition. Online forums buzzed with debates about Richard's worthiness of the award, with many questioning whether his success was solely attributable to his own merits or to the contributions of those around him. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like Zenith Heist and Justice for Evelyn trending worldwide. Building on this, however, we must acknowledge the subtle shifts in societal attitudes. The public, increasingly disillusioned with corporate greed and unchecked power, seemed to revel in Richard's misfortune. There was a sense of vicarious satisfaction, a collective cheer for the underdog who dared to challenge the established order. This wasn't just about a stolen trophy. It was about a yearning for fairness, a desire for accountability, a demand for recognition of the often invisible contributions of women in positions of support. Now, consider how this applies when you face similar systemic issues. Even seemingly insignificant actions can ripple outward, affecting not only individuals, but also the broader social landscape. A single act of courage, of defiance, can spark a movement, challenging entrenched power structures and inspiring others to speak out against injustice. The disappearance of the Zenith Trophy became more than a news item. It became a symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of one person to disrupt the status quo. Let us delve into the complexities of Evelyn's situation, moving beyond the simplistic narrative of victim versus oppressor. While Richard's actions were undoubtedly reprehensible, the environment that enabled him to thrive was far more insidious. It was a culture of unspoken expectations, of subtle biases, of ingrained prejudices that permeated every level of the organization. Consider the countless meetings where Evelyn's ideas were dismissed or appropriated by male colleagues, the social gatherings where she was relegated to the role of arm candy, the implicit message that her primary value lay in her ability to support her husband's ambitions. This environment wasn't unique to Richard's company. It was a microcosm of a larger societal problem. For generations, women have been conditioned to prioritize the needs of others, to suppress their own desires, to accept a secondary role in both professional and personal spheres. This conditioning often begins in childhood, with subtle cues and expectations that shape their perceptions of themselves and their place in the world. Toys marketed differently, subjects emphasized or downplayed in educational settings, and the pervasive influence of media portrayals that reinforce traditional gender roles all contribute to this conditioning. Furthermore, explore the intricate web of relationships that sustained this power dynamic. Richard wasn't operating in a vacuum. He was surrounded by a coterie of enablers, individuals who benefited from his success and were therefore incentivized to perpetuate the status quo. These enablers included board members who turned a blind eye to his transgressions, colleagues who flattered his ego, and even friends who excused his behavior as mere eccentricity. Their complicity, whether active or passive, created a protective shield around Richard, insulating him from accountability and reinforcing his sense of invulnerability. The concept of learned helplessness becomes particularly relevant here. Years of being silenced, ignored, and undervalued can lead individuals to internalize a sense of powerlessness, making it difficult to envision alternative possibilities or to assert their own agency. Evelyn's act of defiance, therefore, was not just a spontaneous outburst of anger, it was a courageous act of breaking free from the shackles of learned helplessness, of reclaiming her voice and asserting her right to be seen, heard, and valued. Now ponder this. What are the internal barriers that prevent others from taking similar action? Fear of retribution, social ostracism, and economic insecurity are just a few of the factors that can deter individuals from challenging powerful figures or institutions. The risks associated with speaking out can be considerable, and the potential rewards are often uncertain. It takes immense courage and resilience to overcome these barriers and to stand up for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you. Reflect on the power of collective action. While Evelyn's initial act was a solitary one, it had the potential to inspire others to come forward and share their own experiences. The more individuals who speak out against injustice, the stronger the collective voice becomes, and the more difficult it is for those in power to ignore or silence them. Building alliances, forming support networks, and amplifying marginalized voices are essential strategies for creating lasting change and fostering a more equitable society. Consider the personal ramifications of Evelyn's actions, stepping away from the broader societal implications for a moment. The trophy, now hidden away, was not just a symbol of Richard's perceived triumph or a representation of her own denied recognition. It morphed into a physical manifestation of her suppressed identity, her stifled creativity, and her years of emotional subjugation. Imagine it as a pressure valve, releasing the pent-up frustration of a life lived in the shadows. Contemplate the moral quandary Evelyn faced. Returning the trophy would mean tacitly accepting Richard's assessment of her worth, reinforcing the very system she sought to dismantle. Yet, exposing the toxicity of their environment risked not only her own social standing, but also potential legal repercussions. She was caught between the desire for personal vindication and the potential for widespread disruption, a decision fraught with complexity and uncertainty. A subtle yet vital element to explore is the matter of internal validation. For years, Evelyn had sought external approval, measuring her self-worth by the standards of a society that inherently undervalued her. The theft of the trophy, however impulsive, represented a shift in her perspective, a recognition that true validation must come from within. It was an acknowledgement of her own skills, talents, and contributions, irrespective of external recognition. Delving into the psychology of the situation, it becomes clearer that Evelyn's act was a form of self-preservation. Years of emotional neglect and belittlement had taken their toll, eroding her self-esteem and leaving her feeling invisible. The heist was a desperate attempt to reclaim her sense of agency, to assert her existence, and to remind herself that she was not simply an extension of her husband's identity. Another crucial layer is the potential for unintended consequences. While Evelyn's actions were driven by a desire for justice and self-respect, they could inadvertently harm innocent individuals. Employees who relied on Richard's company for their livelihoods, charities that benefited from his philanthropy, and even family members who were unaware of the toxic dynamics within their marriage could all suffer as a result of her actions. Now, ponder how one balances the pursuit of personal justice with the potential for collateral damage. Is it ever justifiable to inflict harm on others in order to achieve a greater good? Or does the end never justify the means? These are ethical dilemmas that lack easy answers, requiring careful consideration of competing values and potential outcomes. Reflect on the burden of secrecy Evelyn now carries. Knowing the truth about the missing trophy, She must navigate social interactions with a newfound awareness, constantly guarding against exposure. This constant vigilance could lead to increased stress, anxiety, and isolation, further complicating her already complex situation. The weight of her secret could become as oppressive as the environment she sought to escape. Now let's shift our gaze toward the media frenzy that enveloped Evelyn, post-heist. The story transcended mere gossip, ballooning into a cultural touchstone, sparking passionate debates across every stratum of society. Television talking heads, renowned for their pontifications, dissected her motives with surgical precision, some painting her as a wronged woman seeking retribution, others as a common thief driven by spiteful envy. Pundits on both sides of the aisle seized upon the narrative, using it as a springboard to air grievances about gender inequality, corporate malfeasance, and the widening chasm between the haves and have-nots. In the digital sphere, a veritable army of armchair detectives emerged, scrutinizing every facet of Evelyn's life, from her meticulously curated social media profiles to unearthed yearbook photos from her adolescence. Conspiracy theories flourished, alleging everything from secret alliances with rival corporations to a clandestine past as a globe-trotting art thief. The anonymity afforded by the internet emboldened a chorus of voices, some offering fervent support, others hurling venomous accusations, turning the comment sections into a digital coliseum. Consider for a moment the insidious nature of this public spectacle. Evelyn, once a private citizen, was now thrust into the harsh glare of the spotlight, her every move dissected, analyzed, and judged by millions of strangers. The relentless scrutiny invaded her privacy, transforming her into a caricature, a symbol devoid of nuance or complexity. The human being behind the headline was lost in the noise, replaced by a one-dimensional figure defined by a single, audacious act. Conversely, observe the power dynamics at play in the media's framing of the story. While some outlets attempted to present a balanced perspective, many were quick to sensationalize the narrative, focusing on the salacious details and perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The wronged woman trope, for instance, while seemingly sympathetic, subtly reinforces the idea that a woman's worth is contingent upon her relationship to a man, reducing her agency and minimizing her individual accomplishments. To shed further light, think about the role of social media in amplifying and distorting the truth. The speed and reach of these platforms allowed misinformation to spread like wildfire, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. Rumors, half-truths, and outright lies were disseminated with alarming ease, shaping public opinion and further complicating Evelyn's already precarious situation. The very tools designed to connect people were, in this instance, weaponized to tear her down. Turning our attention to another angle, the unintended consequences of this media storm extended far beyond Evelyn herself. The relentless focus on her actions overshadowed the larger systemic issues at play, diverting attention from the underlying problems of gender inequality and corporate corruption. The spectacle became a distraction, preventing meaningful dialogue and hindering progress toward lasting change. Let us now examine the potential for manipulation within this media landscape. Those with vested interests, keen to protect their own reputations or deflect scrutiny, could strategically leak information or orchestrate smear campaigns to control the narrative. The media, eager for a juicy story, could be easily manipulated, unwittingly serving as a mouthpiece for those seeking to maintain the status quo. Weigh, if you will, the ethical responsibilities of journalists in such a situation. Should they prioritize sensationalism and entertainment, or should they strive to provide accurate, nuanced, and socially responsible coverage? The answer, of course, is not always clear-cut, as media outlets often face competing pressures from advertisers, shareholders, and the public. However, in cases like Evelyn's, where the stakes are high and the potential for harm is significant, the need for ethical journalism is paramount. Consider now the unforeseen ripple effects within Evelyn's immediate social circles. Acquaintances, previously eager to bask in the reflected glory of her affluent lifestyle, began to distance themselves, their invitations dwindling to a trickle. The once familiar patter of polite chatter at luncheons transformed into hushed whispers and sidelong glances, creating an atmosphere thick with apprehension. It wasn't just about the potential scandal. It was a subtle recalibration of their own positions within the intricate hierarchy of their society. Evelyn's transgression, real or perceived, had disrupted the established order, forcing everyone to reassess their alliances and allegiances. A fresh perspective arises when we examine the evolving dynamics within her family. Children, previously shielded from the undercurrents of their parents' relationship, became unwitting observers, grappling with the dissonance between the public image of their father and the whispered accusations swirling around their mother. Sibling loyalties were tested, as some staunchly defended Richard, while others quietly questioned his behavior, seeking to understand the motivations behind Evelyn's dramatic action. The comfortable certainty of their family unit fractured, replaced by a landscape of uncertainty and shifting alliances. A contrasting viewpoint surfaces when we probe the motivations of Richard himself during this period. Publicly, he maintained an air of wounded dignity, portraying himself as the victim of a capricious act of betrayal. Privately, however, he seethed with a potent mixture of anger, embarrassment, and a growing sense of vulnerability. His carefully constructed persona of invincibility had been shattered, revealing the fragile ego beneath. He launched a covert campaign to discredit Evelyn, utilizing his extensive network of contacts to disseminate damaging information and manipulate public opinion, hoping to reclaim his tarnished reputation. To view this from another angle, let's reflect on the potential for personal growth amidst such turmoil. Evelyn, stripped of her former social standing and facing an uncertain future, found herself confronting long-dormant aspects of her own identity. The enforced isolation provided space for introspection, allowing her to reevaluate her priorities, reconnect with forgotten passions, and cultivate a newfound sense of self-reliance. The crisis, while undoubtedly painful, presented an opportunity for profound personal transformation, a chance to forge a new path based on her own values and aspirations. A related point involves the exploration of alternative resolutions to this conflict. Instead of resorting to theft and public confrontation, could Evelyn have pursued other avenues for redress? Perhaps she could have sought legal counsel, documented Richard's behavior, and initiated divorce proceedings, exposing the toxic environment through official channels. Or she might have chosen to quietly withdraw from the marriage, focusing on building a new life for herself without engaging in a public battle. These alternative strategies, while less dramatic, could have potentially yielded more sustainable and less damaging outcomes. Examining this from a different vantage point, we can see the seeds of future societal change being sown. Evelyn's act, regardless of its ultimate outcome, sparked a wider conversation about gender roles, power dynamics, and the insidious nature of systemic inequality. Her story resonated with many women who had experienced similar forms of discrimination, emboldening them to speak out, challenge the status quo, and demand a more equitable society. The ripples of her rebellion extended far beyond her own personal sphere, contributing to a growing movement for social justice and equality. A significant addition involves considering the long-term psychological impact of this ordeal on all involved. Evelyn, Richard, their children, and even their close acquaintances would likely carry the scars of this experience for years to come. The trauma of betrayal, the shame of public exposure, and the emotional toll of navigating such a high-stakes conflict could have lasting effects on their mental health and well-being, underscoring the importance of seeking professional support and fostering healthy coping mechanisms. Reflecting on this journey so far, the narrative threads, though seemingly disparate, begin to weave themselves into a cohesive tapestry. It's not merely a story of a trophy, or a marriage fractured, or a society scandalized. It is, more fundamentally, a chronicle of transformation, a testament to the enduring human capacity for resilience and the inherent drive to reclaim one's authentic self. The earlier glimpses into the complexities of power, the suffocating weight of expectations, and the reverberating echoes of defiance now coalesce, forming a prism through which we can perceive a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the human condition. The accumulation of these events, much like sediment layering over millennia, has sculpted a landscape of profound implications. Consider the shifting sands of public opinion, the ebb and flow of societal judgment, the way a single act can trigger seismic shifts in collective consciousness. The narrative has resisted simple categorization, refusing to be confined to the comfortable boxes of victim and perpetrator, right and wrong. Instead, it has presented a multifaceted portrait of individuals caught in a web of circumstance, grappling with moral ambiguities and navigating the treacherous terrain of personal agency. Drawing these strands together, we see the emergence of a critical question. What constitutes true liberation? Is it the acquisition of external validation, the attainment of power and influence, or something far more intrinsic? The story has subtly challenged the conventional metrics of success, suggesting that true fulfillment lies not in the accolades bestowed by others, but in the unwavering embrace of one's own values and the courageous pursuit of one's own truth. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, not as a neatly paved road leading to a predetermined destination, but as a meandering trail winding through uncharted territory. The choices that lie ahead are not simple binary options, but complex decisions with far-reaching consequences, demanding a careful consideration of competing priorities and a willingness to embrace the inherent uncertainties of life. The stakes, as we approach the culmination of this narrative, are not merely personal, but deeply societal, reflecting the ongoing struggle to create a more just and equitable world. As we pivot towards the final reflection, it is essential to acknowledge the enduring power of human connection. Even amidst the turmoil and conflict, there have been glimpses of empathy, compassion, and the unwavering support of those who dared to see beyond the surface. These moments of connection serve as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope remains, fueled by the unwavering belief in the potential for human kindness and understanding. The narrative's cumulative effect can be likened to the slow, deliberate unfurling of a tightly wound spring. The tension has been building, coil by coil, as we have witnessed the unfolding of events and the intricate interplay of human emotions. Now, as we approach the final release, the energy is palpable, the anticipation heightened. The question that remains is not simply how the story will end, but what lessons we will carry forward, what transformations we will embrace, and what actions we will take to create a more meaningful and fulfilling future. Evelyn stood at a precipice, not of a cliff overlooking a chasm, but of her own making. The trophy, still hidden, had become less a symbol of stolen victory and more a heavy weight, a constant reminder of the choices before her. The city, once a landscape of familiar comforts, now felt like a stage, every eye an unseen judge. The question wasn't simply what to do with the trophy, but what kind of person she wanted to be. The easy path lay in returning it, anonymously, hoping to fade back into the comfortable shadows of her former life. But the shadows held a chilling truth. They were a prison built of unspoken expectations and stifled dreams. To retreat would be to betray the spark of defiance that had ignited within her, to silence the voice that had finally found its strength. The alternative was fraught with peril, exposing Richard's behavior, revealing the systemic toxicity of their world, would unleash a storm that could consume everything in its path. It would mean sacrificing her social standing, risking legal repercussions, and potentially harming those who were innocent bystanders. Yet, it offered the possibility of something more profound, a chance to dismantle the structures that had silenced her, and countless others, a chance to create a more equitable and just reality. The true weight of the trophy, she realized, wasn't its material value, but the responsibility it represented. It was a catalyst, forcing her to confront not only the injustices she had endured, but also the power she possessed to effect change. The choice wasn't about revenge or vindication, but about legacy. What would she leave behind? A whisper of rebellion, quickly forgotten, or a resounding call for transformation that would echo through generations? She considered the women who had come before her, the silent partners, the unsung heroes, the brilliant minds relegated to the margins. Their stories, often untold, were a testament to the enduring power of resilience, but also a stark reminder of the systemic barriers that continued to impede progress. She thought of her own daughter, poised on the cusp of adulthood, and the world she would inherit. Would it be a world where talent was recognized regardless of gender, where voices were valued irrespective of status, where justice prevailed over power? The decision wasn't merely a personal one. It was a moral imperative. It was a recognition that true liberation wasn't about escaping oppression, but about dismantling the structures that enabled it. It was about using her privilege, her platform, to amplify the voices of those who were silenced, to challenge the status quo, and to pave the way for a more equitable future. The true practice begins now, not with grand gestures or dramatic pronouncements, but with the quiet, unwavering commitment to living a life of authenticity and purpose. It begins with recognizing the power we each possess to challenge injustice, to amplify marginalized voices, and to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. It begins with a single defiant act of choosing to be seen, to be heard, and to be counted.